Most of you know me, I'm Tom Seager, and you all know Dan. So despite the fact that you're familiar with Dan, I'm going to say a few words about how this process works, a few words about Dan, and then I'm going to turn it over to him. The way the process works is there's a public portion and a private portion, especially for those graduate students who are still students and haven't gone through this themselves. This is the oral examination, which is a requirement for the degree of Doctor of Philosophy. The public portion, the candidate, Dan, will take questions from you. The committee, which is seated in the front row, we're going to reserve our questions until the private session. In the private session, we quiz Dan about his logic and his conclusions and anything else in his dissertation for which we think we need greater clarification. If Dan passes, then he will have satisfied all of the requirements for his degree, and I think you'll be graduating in May if you pass today. Does that sound right? Okay. So typically, Dan will talk for about 30-35 minutes. He will moderate his own questions, and then we'll take a little break in which we excuse everyone but the committee. And I don't want you to be offended by this. If you're waiting for Dan, it could take an hour, it could take an hour and a half, it could take days of examination. I'm just kidding. Dan's in great shape. Now that we have a kind of a movie of what the process is like, it's customary for someone like me, a principal advisor, to say a few words about Dan. And you've been probably, you might not be aware, I've been thinking about this for 3 or 4 years, anticipating this moment like advisors do. And I don't want to draw it out. There's something particular about Dan that I do want to share. It's very common for students in our sustainable engineering program to come into graduate school with the ambition that they want to change the world. I started graduate school that way, and we know that those ambitions get dialed back when they're in the throes of actually writing a dissertation. Most of us are fortunate to make a change in the library, if not the world at large, but the knowledge that we create is intended to make the world a better place. And this is something that's characteristic of sustainable engineering. So as far as making a change in the world, I think Dan is actually off to a really good start. He has made a change in me. When Dan arrived, he was highly well qualified to do a dissertation related to life cycle assessment of photovoltaics. Chuck Redmond and I had a little bit of a disagreement because Dan wanted to switch his topic to resilient infrastructure. And Chuck said, Dan, go for it. This is a great idea. You should rearrange your fellowship application and you should dedicate yourself to what you really want to do. And I said, are you nuts? You have a great head start, and all you need to do is continue on the things that you have already done well, and you'll have a short path to a doctoral degree. Chuck's wisdom turned out to be more insightful than mine because Dan rearranged his fellowship application, rearranged his career trajectory. He did take longer, but I think it was worth it. And I rearranged my own career around Dan. In this way, Dan is already making a change in the world. He's made a change in my world, in my life, in my career, and I know from knowing many of the people in the audience that you have also rearranged your ideas and the way you perceive the world around the challenges that Dan has presented to you. So we're fortunate here to have this last chance to learn in person from Dan, the PhD candidate. And I've asked Dan to leave us with whatever pearls of wisdom he can in the moments that he has left. Take it away, Dan.